My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. I'm only here to even the score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Knighted Ones podcast, episode number 59. And we are also in season 2. Just as a reminder, we're the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous rapper, our resident influencer and IG star, just shooting the breeze, talking UCF sports. Remember to like and follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and check out the 70-plus teams and conferences on the College Huddle, Big 12 Huddle, 4th in Florida, and New Stream. With that, let's bring everyone into the show. We have a lot to talk about today following another UCF loss. So I'm going to let our producer, Nobra, start bringing in the guys. Josh Lazar, how goes it?
Well, I'm not supposed to be up here, so I am so unprepared.
That's true.
But
You're
now
usually last. That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm usually last. See, this is what happens. Okay. Ready? Hold on. For those of you who are in video, start scene. The good folks from Little Rock, Arkansas, warned me about the play of KJ. Over 2,400 yards would be a shock for you, which will not happen after Saturday. So now we know what we are in football. The slow and one-dimensional team you see. So until we change, it's basic poetry for y'all. A slow and one-dimensional scheme, A-B-A-B.
I like it.
Thank you. I'd have more applause if I was last.
That's a good point.
I'm hoping you are in your car hanging out and going, yes, no rapping, just basic poetry.
Just poetry right there. All right, let's bring on Mr. Ben Stout. How's it going?
What's up, guys? Well, unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of positivity to talk about after the UF debacle, and hoping we can figure out a way to turn this around this season. But happy to be on with you guys again. It was interesting to see Josh go first there.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Roger's gonna scream at his podcast device when he listens to this. But yeah, it'll be fun. For that reason alone, I'm glad Nobra did that.
That's a good point.
Listen. It's if I wasn't even ready. I wasn't ready. I'm being
you came into your own there on the slam poetry. And at this point, as you said, Josh, no bars until we get a win.
Nope, not.
And I hope that we get one of those some point soon.
Well, look, speaking of the other guys, we're a little short today. Obviously, Roger is not with us. And then Mr. Trey Neal looks like he may join us at some time. But until then, let's get started with this trio. Guys, as we've all alluded to, we're all kind of in a swampy mood, if you will. After another loss, we're now on a 2-game skid. UCF drops to Florida 24-13 at the Swamp. I was at the game. Josh, I believe you were at the game. It was real ugly. Just like the Colorado game, maybe worse in some ways. I mean, the score was obviously closer as far as the final margin, but overall it was pretty boring for UCF. Got really nothing going on offense throughout the game. It was just a bad overall performance. Probably one of the worst offensive performances in a UCF loss that I can remember in quite some time. Even in the Gus Malzahn, there's been some games I remember under Mikey Keene where we only scored around 17, 16, but the offense just seemed better in those games, if that makes sense. This game, they just looked awful. The defense was pretty bad, I guess, unless you want to count the second half. And overall, it's just a very listless and lifeless performance from the team coming after the Colorado game where you thought, hey, that would wake them up, an in-state opponent on the road, a hell of an environment. It was really cool. It's the first time I've ever been to the Gator Stadium. I thought it was awesome. Probably a lot of these guys that played Pee Wee ball together being in the state of Florida and just come out completely flat again. Obviously it's a non-conference game, but it just, I think, changed any positive feelings or anyone that was still, holding out hope. I think that pretty much ended it in that game. I mean, it was one thing to Colorado where you could say, hey, look, we didn't come prepared. It was, we didn't shine in the moment from all the stuff that was going on in that game. It was just a 1-game sample size. But then in this game, when you look arguably worse, it's looking like that's just going to be how the season is. So guys, thoughts?
Go ahead, Josh.
It was... Here's the thing. It was bad. We all know it was bad. And here's the reason why it was bad. Bad number one. Anyone who was there from both sides realized we absolutely had a shot at winning that game. It was very clear that it was possible. Now, the first half, like every single first half we've pretty much had against a team with a pulse, which is pretty much games 3 through 5, we've done pretty much nothing in the first half. And that we were able to overcome that in TCU when KJ played like that. KJ wins this game. We just can't get the level of consistency we need across the board. And I'm not going to put everything on the O-line, even though some others might. I'm not going to put everything on KJ, although some others might. It was an overall team loss, mostly on offense. I know we blew past text talk because we didn't really want to talk too much about what was going on. It wasn't good, I'll tell you that. But one of the things I did say over and over again is this is on the offense. The Gators had the ball for like 20 minutes in the first half. You can't leave the defense out that long. And to be honest, to only give up as much as they did in the first half with everything else going on isn't too bad. The offense is the problem. The lack of offense in the first half helped with these scores. The lack of offense in the second half didn't allow us to get back. And to be frank, other than one quarter, I'd say even one quarter, maybe the second half of TCU. But outside of that, and forget the first 2 games, offense is, we're in a Gus Malzahn offense that's doing nothing. Like virtually nothing. And that's the thing that infuriates me so much because we all know what Gus can do at times. It's just something is broken. And whether it's stubbornness of the head coach to play some other people or some other parts of the playbook, or the inability to play other people or the playbook, or just we just really got given an amazing amount of puffery this entire offseason for some odd reason. I don't know what it is, but the offense is the problem, and that should never happen in a Gus Malzahn based or led team. Period. End of statement.
So I think what's interesting is like looking back on the Gus Malzahn era. And we were talking about it today, just in our group text today, is like, beside maybe the Gasparilla Bowl, like have we seen it seems like good offensive performances, good offensive game plans, the execution of that good offensive game plan, like that seems to be in the now like close to 3.5 years that Gus has been here, seems to be more of the exception rather than the rule. Our previous 2 head coaches, that was absolutely the rule. The rule was that we were going to burn you on offense. We were a juggernaut on offense. And it was a matter of could our offensive production allow enough help for our defense to hang on? That was certainly the case in the Heupel era, obviously, because of the speed of that offense and the amount of plays in a short period of time. And in the Frost era was just kind of next level because it was just a innovative offense for that time, and the speed of our offense and everything. But it seems to be in the Gus Malzahn era, like having a good game plan offensively, executing that game plan really well seems to be like a anomaly rather than the rule. Like I said today, I believe the only time I could really recall that happening is the last time we played Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl. One of the other things to kind of go along the lines of this Gus talk, because hey, it's right for us to talk about Gus Malzahn and to put a lot of the blame of the last two games and the way this season is going on the head coach, because he has put this entire season on his shoulders. So it's right for us to talk about it as a UCF podcast, to say that Gus, it starts with him. And one of the things that I found interesting that I didn't quite think about until this morning when I was listening to Mark Daniels on the radio is going into this game from a national perspective. No talk was about Gus Malzahn. All right. It was all about Billy Napier. Is this going to be the last game that he's going to coach at UF? And the week leading up to that, yes, the talk was about that. The Gator fan base was talking about that. But what we saw on the UCF side is multiple players defecting, deciding to take their red shirt, and they're leaving with the game. And now that's the new era of college football. It's the least fan-centric era that there's ever been. And it wasn't like RJ Harvey left. Like, I mean, we could talk about the players that have left, but it's not like key players left, right? But we had defectives. I didn't do like the tiniest detail of research on this, but I believe UF didn't really have any defectives. They didn't have people leaving for their red shirt, taking their red shirt. And then what we saw on the field on Saturday night, and this is what Mark Daniels mentioned in his radio broadcast this morning, is we saw a team who is playing their butts off for their head coach. And that team that I'm describing is not in black and gold. They were in blue and orange. And that, I think, is a huge difference between where those two programs are at the moment, or where the two teams are at the moment. And it is just and it's very frustrating to see as a UCF fan, is that we have, I mean, Colorado aside, like the things that we saw in Colorado, like, were extremely disappointing. And you never want to lose a conference game, especially when so much attention was on your program at that point. But to do this against what I said in the text talk, what I've said on social media, is one of the worst, if not the worst, UF team in the last 4 or 5 decades. To do this against them with this opportunity in front of us, like, regardless of where they're at this season, this is extremely disappointing, and that's to say it lightly, because this is an E for Everyone podcast. And so it's disappointing is the word that I will use right now, but it's probably not fully appropriate for what it is. And then player wise, I mean, I just think that I can't put my finger on it because I'm not in the locker room and I'm not in practices every time, but it just looks like KJ either has no willingness to go through his progressions, or just doesn't quite grasp what he's seeing on the field and what he knows in the playbook, or lack thereof. That it just seems like he would, every time there was what appeared to be a pass play, he would slightly look downfield and then just tuck and run, because no going through progressions. I just haven't seen KJ do that this season, going through his progressions. And so football minds can speak a little bit better about those details than I can. But it's pretty, as somebody who has never played football in his life, that's pretty obvious for me. Just watching the game is that it just seems like he's one look and go. And we thought we were going to get a better version of that. And last thing I'll say I know we didn't get to text talk, but one of the things I said during the third quarter of this game is that KJ was making JRP look like a prime Russell Wilson. Like I just where is this offense with our quarterback? Like where are we going as an offensive team? And there's a lot of things to fix. And every time Gus gets asked about that in his press conference, he just repeats whatever question that was given to him and says, "Yeah, we got to fix it." And it's like, okay, so what are we actually doing to fix it? Because we need to see it this Saturday.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben. I mean, it's we've spoken with Trey. I've spoken with Rashad Kazi, who's my neighbor, and multiple players, and they've told me that in their former player text group that they don't see any leaders on this team. They don't see any excitement on the sidelines. They don't see any, fight on this team, and they don't see people picking each other up or ripping each other when necessary on the sidelines. And we talk about losing JRP. It's not just his talent. I think we did lose his leadership. That was a big thing. And, the funny thing is, I don't even know if the leadership is as a whole and all that, those intangibles is the biggest problem on this team. Maybe things are stemming from that. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I mean, just there's so many other issues. And maybe if they fought harder and all this other stuff, maybe the results would be closer. But I don't think that would even make them get over the hump if they had all this leadership, because there's just problems with O-line depth, obviously QB play, like you said, the lack of pass rush, an incompetent defensive coordinator, horrible play calling, an offense that seemingly can't play against any defense with a modicum of a pulse, just being one-dimensional on offense. All these transfers that we thought were going to be great on defense, being not all of them being bust, but a good portion of them being bust. I mean, it's funny. I was thinking about this today. Going into last season, I knew there was going to be losses purely because it was our first year in the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing at that point. I was maybe slightly skeptical of Gus, but nowhere where I'm at now. And I didn't think we were going to lose games because of Gus. I was thinking we don't have enough talent. But I remember going into every game having hope. And I remember going into every game thinking, hey, we could maybe pull this off. And then look at it. How many close games did we have last year? Right. We were in every game outside of one or two. This year, I texted you guys before. I said my final score was 27-13. I went to the Colorado game thinking we were going to lose. Like I'm going into these games now with no hope and expecting to lose, where last year in the back of my head, I was like, there's a good chance we could lose this game, but I think we could pull it out. Even when we were down 7-3, I was like, that felt insurmountable. I hate to say it, but it just did. Like or even down 24-13. And stopping them on every drive in the second half, I thought there was no chance the offense could go to the other end and score because of another one of our problems, red zone, inefficiency. So to me, it feels like the problems are significantly worse this year. And I guess, kind of like you said, Ben, I would have to ask a football guy. I don't know if the talent is better or worse. I think, at best it's even to last year, but I'm not sure that we're more talented than last year, even though we have a lot of those key guys back from last year, like, Kobe and RJ. It just feels like there's just too many problems on this team and it's insurmountable. But to me, it starts with Gus Malzahn. I mean, he says that every press conference, right? It starts with me. So, I mean, I'm kind of regurgitating what he says, but it's the truth. I mean, he recruited these players. He hired these coaches. He puts together the offensive game plan. He puts together the preparation. He leads practice. So to me, yeah, obviously there is, like Josh said, there is blame to spread around. It's not exclusively on Gus Malzahn. Yes, KJ played horrible. Yes, the offensive line gave up 5 sacks and gave him very little time to throw. But I mean, at the end of the day, Gus is the architect of this team. So for me, I just don't have a lot of faith. I have pretty much no faith in him anymore that I think whether the game passed him by or whatever the case is, I think he cares deeply. I'm not questioning his him wanting to win or just collecting a paycheck. I don't subscribe to any of that, but I just think he can't make this work. Like it's just every year has gotten worse. We've gotten a worse record year after year after year, and there's a built-in excuse in all of them. But I just don't think he has it in him to turn this around, whether he just doesn't know how. The game's passed him by or whatever, his coaching style is outdated. He's too stubborn, whatever the case may be. I just don't think he anymore can turn this around. And these booms that, everyone gets so excited about, like they're empty at the end of the day. A lot of them don't play. And even if they do, it doesn't matter with all that talent. If you're not able to put together a competent rest of your coaching staff, a competent playbook, and put your players in a position to win. So for me, I just don't think he can lead a Power 4 program to any level of respectable success. I don't think he'll ever be a guy that's 2-10 or 3-9, but I don't think he'll ever be a guy that's consistently has you in the conversation outside of, a crazy year here and there, which he's done sometimes in his career. And I'll talk about that later in my stat of the week or whatever, but I just have lost faith in him. And I don't necessarily think he's lost the team per se. I just don't think he can put them in a position to be successful.
And the thing is, he's lost the fan base.
That's
really that is not a big deal because you can get the fan base back. Part of my other text talk was going to be the insane part of all of this is that we're not going to, obviously, but we could just win out and get into the playoffs. It's not going to happen. I don't think it's happening in any way, shape, or form, but that is still a possibility. So that is part of the blessing, if you will, of being in the Big 12. Unfortunately, some of the curse of that is if we were in the American, if you will, we might be able to get 3 or 4 or 5 games to figure this out and then go on a run. You don't get that anymore, which is okay. So I think that's the bigger issue because if you lose the fan base and it's tough because the fan base has been the best part of the last 2 games. There's a ton of people in Gainesville. There was a ton of excitement at Colorado at home. All of this goodwill, that's the problem with these games. And if it were more like TCU, I think we'd have a different conversation. But we all see what's in front of our eyes. And that is causing a significant amount of apathy. And I'm on that edge right now, too. And I am usually the most optimistic because I had some of these in the past. I've had these students in my classes. And I agree to your point, Ben. When you show up after Matt Prater misses that kick on Christmas, right? And his
Christmas Eve, we'll never forget it.
Whatever. It was late enough to probably be Christmas. And the next semester, I start teaching class and I talk about it a little bit and they boo Matt Prater in class and I tell them not to. And his roommate tells me, thank you for sticking up for him. It's been a really rough couple of months, right? That's the difference between now then and now. One of the differences. None of these students are going to see these kids in their classes more than likely for 2 reasons. One, they're not going to stick here for 4 years. 2, they're probably so focused on football that they're not as much focused on school. And O'Leary wouldn't have let that happen, but that's a whole nother story. So with all of that being said, they got to get this is why this game this week is important to play because you're going to have to get the fan base back. I mean, forget winning to try to get to a bowl game or try to even do better in the rankings and not rankings, but like in the conference. But it hasn't been this bad maybe since 2015.
That's
after
what it was.
The Wagner game. Was it Wagner? Was that the one that we lost?
Furman,
Wagner, we lost to, I think, in basketball back in the day. But Furman, yeah. I mean, at that point, all is lost. But this is just it's because of who we lost to and how we lost. If we lost to FIU, we're all down in the dumps, but not for the same exact reason. But it's just tough.
You talked about it earlier. You said, "Oh, well, this is what happens when you're in the Big 12, right? Like that like we don't have any time to figure it out." But like that's what the game on this past Saturday night like puts it in under a microscope because we've asked for that for ages. We've asked to be in a coward. Like we want the respect, right? Like we've wanted to be put in that position against an SEC opponent, against our in-state, SEC, like the Gators. The Gators is that's it. Like we want to play against the Gators in the swamp at night as a Power 4 team.
Yeah.
And we've wanted all of this, right? Like we said, man, if we get the resources, we get we get invited into the club, so to speak, like we're going to really this is going to continue to show. And I think that's the reason why the fan base, myself included, all of us included, are so like fired up about it, is because we are in that club now.
Yeah.
And we're not doing what we said we were going to do once we got in. We're not doing it. We're not. And on top of that, I think another way that you lose the fan base is when you see a poor product on the field, and there's two things. One, it doesn't look like the players on the field care as much as they should, whether that's optics or bad, whatever it may be. Like we could be wrong about that, but I'm just saying that when the perception is that's one thing. The second thing is when it doesn't appear to be a confirmed or even strong plan to get us out of this situation.
Right.
Yeah. That's where you really lose a fan base, because you're like, listen, like I'm with you if we could turn this around, but how are you going to help turn it around? Well, we just got to get better. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, the remaining Gus loyalists have really hopped off the Gus bus.
Yeah,
I have not seen the turn of the tide over the last two games. Like he probably still had some people left before the Florida game. Hey, you go beat Florida. We're 4-1. Cool. We just beat Florida at the Swamp.
That would have been me.
We're back, baby.
That's
right.
Everyone on the fan base.
Right.
Everyone.
And now I was gone before that, but I agree 100% that the rest of the people are now gone. Now, sure. Can you go out and win every game and have the fan base back and we're 10-2? Of course. The fan bases can be fickle. Yes, you can get them back. But I think the difference now is that the excuses are gone. That the built-in excuses, it's the first season in the Big 12. We had JRP injured, whatever it is, that now the fan base doesn't believe in him. Yes, you can get them back, but I think that's always going to be the back of our head. Even if we were to go into 4 straight, I still think it'd be all back in our mind. Well, where's the collapse coming? I think the belief is gone that Gus can maintain success and consistently do it at a high level. Sure, he could win the fan base back, but my thing is, like I said, this is a 3.5-year sample size where every major opportunity we've had to take it to the next level under Gus has been a failure. You lose 3 out of 4 in 2022. You lose the chance to host the conference championship. You lose the automatic Cotton Bowl bid. You lose 2 bowl games in a row this year. You're in front of 4 million viewers, have a chance to have your brand really recognized, because obviously big part because Dion or whatever's there. Yeah. You have big noon kickoff there. You blow it. This week, you have a chance to say, hey, Florida isn't our big brother. Even though it's their worst season, we're going up to the Swamp and we're spanking them, and you blow it. Like every major opportunity that we've had under Gus has been blown after the first Florida win. He's done nothing since that Florida win in his first season. That was the highlight, the total peak of Gus as UCF's coach. Everything since then has been downhill outside of booms and off-season excitement. And I don't want to be too hyperbolic here, but I feel like he's eroded and shredded most of what we built over the past 10 years, as far as just the national brand and the 2 undefeated seasons and the NFL players that we've gotten or, put into the league. And on top of that, what about our home field advantage? That is gone. Like that, we used to be one of the toughest places to play in the country. And I know the schedule has gotten tougher, but I think that whole home field advantage, he's just blown up there. That Colorado game, our fan base was so fired up during that game. That should have been a win on pure energy alone, or at least been close enough, where because of the energy. And I think he's shredded that too. So for me, I think he's lost the fan base, and he's I don't want to say he's eroded everything in the past 10 years, but it feels like it. And yes, could you go out there and make a playoff, win a few games in playoffs and it's back? Yeah. But right now UCF has zero national prominence. No one's thinking about us. We're an afterthought. We're just a middling or lower tier Power 4 program that no one gives a crap about. And anytime we've been in the spotlight this year, the last 2 weeks, it has just further dug our grave as where we are considered nationally. I mean, I remember in 17-18, we were arguably the most talked about team. Part of it was, because of the national championship claim, but still we were there. Now we are kind of like a laughing stock, and it's a real shame. I don't think it's forever. College football is cyclical. Sports are cyclical, but what he's done, has eroded a lot of stuff, and the faith for me, and like you said, you guys, a lot of the fan base is just gone, that he's going to be able to turn this around. And it feels like it's time for a new vision.
Yeah. And I'm usually the ultimate optimist, right? And I can't find too many flaws in that argument. I mean, it just doesn't. Do I think 2017, 2018 are going to happen forever? Absolutely not. I'm not naive.
No one
like
does.
Undefeated seasons barely happen every single year, right? It just doesn't happen frequently, period, and a statement. 2 undefeated regular seasons in a row, also probably not happening too often. The problem is we need more than this. And you had 2 shots. And if the players can't get up for these type of games, well, that's the thing. Most of these players are not going to get up for a UF game. They're not the fan base. They haven't been here. They weren't sitting through a 42-0 loss in 2006. They were probably barely alive at that point, right? They haven't been here for 2 or 3 or 4 years and have those issues. I mean, God forbid we play the Cows again. They have no idea of how important that is to the fan base and how they should get amped up for this. I mean, I know people who go to Oklahoma understand that for Texas, and I know that other people going to Michigan understand that for Ohio State. We haven't had that generational ability to do that within not only the fan base, but translate it to the players, translate it to the coaches. And I don't think Gus is leaving. That's the problem.
No.
And do we have the money to hire someone who will do something like this? I can't blame Gus and or the team alone. To the point of we should be better than this. We got to the P4. Yes, we also got to the P4 as probably making the least amount of money of any P4 team. We also got to the P4 when all of this paying for players was behind the scenes, and we thought we can compete on an even level, and all this NIL stuff happens, and now we need to find an extra $20 to $40 million just to pay the team. So I feel like every single time we step up, especially in the last decade, the goalposts keep moving. Go undefeated for an entire season? Nah, you're good. Even though you're the only undefeated team in the entire country. You go undefeated for another full season? Nah, not good enough for the playoff, right? In this 12-team playoff, we'd be in both times. We did good enough to get Cincinnati into the playoff when they went undefeated, and that was a really, really good team. I don't care what happened to them afterwards. They deserve to be there. So I feel like there's all this goalpost shifting of what we want to be, what we should be, what we thought we'd be when we got here. And now we have to fight for our lives to figure out if we make it into perhaps the next round of whatever, which is the 40 to 60 whatever teams that will make up what really makes money. I would say if we ended up getting the money that UF got or that Rutgers gets, we might have a different conversation here. I do think we do typically more with less. I still think we're kind of doing more with less, but my faith is dwindling sadly. Like,
I don't know. Maybe I'm naive, but like it just didn't feel like they out talented us on the field on Saturday night.
They
Like
didn't.
they didn't. So
I
like
agree.
the
They
whole
didn't.
like whole resources thing, it just didn't feel like that was really the case. And something that we didn't talk about last week, because the press conference came out on Monday, but we just happened to miss it, and we didn't talk about this particular thing. But I know, Alan, I know you talked about it on your socials this past week before the game, but like we had a player, after on the Monday press conference after the Colorado game say that we just weren't prepared.
Right.
Like said it to the media in a press conference. And I know it was Mac McWilliams, right, that said it.
Yes.
But regardless, he said that we weren't prepared for this game, and we had 2 weeks to prepare for that game.
Yeah.
And so that comes out, the entire fan base gets enraged by that, or at least the ones that are paying attention. Anyone that heard that should be enraged by it if you're a true fan of the UCF team, because it's like, my goodness, like, why are we more invested in winning football games than the players on the field are, and the coaches and the coaching? Like, why are you underprepared? Like, especially 2 weeks, right? Yeah. So then you go into this week again, all the implications that we just talked about, and it like, what changed? Like nothing seemed to change, and that's again just another point of frustration. It's like, well, you didn't seem to prepare for Colorado, and one of your key players admitted as much. More or less, I mean, he admitted might be the wrong word. He said it matter-of-factly, like, and then on top of that, like, that comes out, everybody gets upset about it, and you don't seem to prepare anymore for. I mean, what did UF do different against us? Like, I mean, what did they did? They packed the box and dared KJ to throw, and we couldn't do it. Like, we couldn't do it. Like, I don't know. It's just
he's missing simple throws too. Like, he's missing simple throws, like that little thing to RJ Harvey. There was a little dump off. He threw it way over his head.
There was a caravan in front of that throw too.
But even just that last throw that got intercepted, the guy was wide. I forgot who it was. I don't know if it was Kobe or whoever who was, but he was wide open. And if he led him,
he threw the wrong spot. I don't think. I don't. Yeah. Oh, you mean the first quarter or the last throw?
No, the very last throw that got intercepted.
Yeah. I'm pretty certain Kobe is not going off the route tree. He's better than that. No, it was a bad throw by KJ.
It was a bad throw. And that's not Gus's fault, but at the end of the day, Gus stuck with him and recruited him. And this guy is not making simple throws that, I would assume one other quarterback on our roster could have made that throw. And it's a large sample size now. He's not making good throws, good decisions. So whether that's the playbook, we all saw KJ's history, he clearly is a competent quarterback to some degree. So whether it's Gus not putting the right positions or he just sucks now, and then either way, there's a problem there that needs to be fixed. But the last thing I'll say on this subject before we move on, I know we're gonna probably talk about KJ, but is, Josh, you brought up a good point. Like, I'm all for entertaining. Like, we're only in year 2 in the Big 12. Our nil is the second lowest in the entire Big 12. We're still building. Gus has only had one recruiting class in the Big 12, and we're still far behind resources wise, and we're getting to that. And I'm all for entertaining that. And I agree with it. I had a friend, tell me that, last week when he was trying to calm me down about it, he was saying, on the positive side, we are still very young in our journey here. And I get it. But my kind of response has two things. BYU's 5-0 and undefeated in the second year on the same level as us. Maybe they have a little more resources, whatever. And SMU's 4-1 and just beat a ranked NC State or whoever it was. Or sorry, not SMU. Yeah, SMU beat, I think, NC State or Louisville, whoever they beat in their year 1 in the Power 4. And I know these, SMU and BYU have been around a long, long, long time, and they have money. But the main counter I have to that is I just don't see the roadmap under Gus. That's what it is for me. I don't see the vision and I don't see the roadmap to getting better. I agree we need more time, we need more resources, but even with that, Gus has had that in the past at Auburn. I just don't see the roadmap to being what we all think, the sleeping giant that we all think we can be and we all strive to get to. I just don't see that roadmap under Gus anymore. And
here's a super dangerous thing about the way our fan base is feeling right now. And I use the word dangerous because it will not help this new era of college football in the way that we're looking forward in the future, is that like we all know UCF fan base, like we're a young fan base. We're results based. There's a lot to do in Orlando, and if you're not putting a product on the field that this fan base can get behind, I worry that those resources aren't going to all of a sudden exponentially get better from the fan base's perspective, from the boosters perspective. Right. Like we still have a very on average young fan base there's not Tyler Gehrings, they don't grow on trees around UCF. And so, so that's still a very rare thing for us to have that kind of support financially from our fan base. So that's where I worry as well, is that are we going to maybe get a little bit better than we are today as far as the NIL is concerned, as far as our coffers are concerned, but we're not going to get better at a rate that is going to catch up to anyone. So. And I believe Trey is behind the scenes, so maybe we should bring him in.
Whoa! Let Alan don't put the man behind the curtain. Let him.
My bad.
Well, listen, I will also say, Tyler, if you are ever interested in coming on the show, it is a open invitation. You can at any time
100%.
come. We are
appreciate your support.
We're not even pay for play. Just come and hang out, and we're good. Alan.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I agree with what you said, Ben. And Trey, you just put in the chat that it's a cop out, and that's why I counter what my friend said. But I still think there is a degree that there is still we're still not on an even playing field. We still aren't. Let's be honest. And we agree, like what you said, Ben. We're not going to get there at a rate that's fast enough or whatever. But in theory, the resources and everything will get better. Which in theory, you would think UCF would be able to do more things with that. But for me, it just comes down to, I just don't see the roadmap under Gus. And I don't think even with an extra X $1 million that he would be any different. We're getting 4-star players now. We're getting supposedly good transfers now. And I know probably not the same level of transfers and recruits as Blue Bloods or whatever upper tier Power Fives, but it doesn't mean that you should be getting blown out by Colorado at home. It doesn't mean when you should be, not able to score on the worst UF team in 5 decades. So for me, that's where I just don't see, it's one thing if we were competitive in both games. Hey, damn, we fought our ass off. We lost by a touchdown. We lost by 3 points like we did last year against Oklahoma. Those were games I held my head high and was proud on. This is a completely different thing to me.
And I mean, can y'all hear me?
There's
we
Trey.
can hear you.
Trey Neal's in the building.
What's up, guys? What's
What's going on?
What's up, Trey?
Just to kind of add to it, like, you can't, if that's the case, okay, we don't have enough NIL dollars to get the talent. We don't have that. If that's the case, don't sell me on this is the most talented team I fielded.
Yeah.
We have a chance to win the Big 12.
Yeah.
You can't sell that. You cannot sell me that and put that product on the field. And again, we're recruiting. I mean, we were number 3 recruiting class in the Big 12. And Gus, if it's one thing, Gus, I will give him his credit. He can get those quote unquote talented guys according to the ratings, according to the rankings. We bring in talented players. Now, one thing we either have to say, Gus, you can't develop those players. That could be the case. Or maybe you guys just don't evaluate talent and you're just looking at stars. Because I can't, it makes no sense to me. I played when we were playing 2-star guys, guys with no star, coach and maximize their potential to be NFL players, and you see it all over the field. I mean, and that's been our history. That's what it's always been. It's not just under one coach. It's been Coach O'Leary. It was Coach Frost getting guys. It was Coach Heupel getting guys, and you have to develop. Otherwise, what's the point in getting all these classes if, one, you're not going to keep them, as we're seeing with with Xavier Townsend and guys in the transfer portal. And if two, you're not going to develop them. Why bring in all this talent if it's never going to get maximized? Why get excited about all this talent if you can't even maximize it? That's one of my main gripes with Gus is you sell me on, we're the most talented team. And we are I don't think there's anybody in the conference that's more talented than what we put out on the field. I think they execute 1,000 times better. I think those guys play better. So that's my main gripe. I don't know if that's what y'all are getting at, but that's where I hopped in. So
agreed.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's 100% true that he did sell us on it. And that was one of my other counters to my friend was that we just got the third best recruiting class. And, if that's the case, if we have the third best recruiting class and these are 4 stars, obviously I know not all of them are going to come in day one ready to play. But you're talking about you had 4 stars last year that are entering sophomore year. Like, where are these guys? Why aren't we playing them? If the transfers,
exactly.
And that's and that's my thing too. Is like, then there's the counter argument. Oh, like, well, you play the best guy, and the transfers are experienced. They probably are the better guy. But my thing is like, we're not getting like all-star amazing transfers. That yes, they're experienced, and yes, some of them are talented, and yes, some of them probably are more ready and are the better play right now than some of these freshmen, but I can't envision all of them are. If anything, I think we're succeeding more in the high school recruiting than we are in the transfer. I think if anything, transfers nil-wise cost way more than the freshmen do. And if we have the second lowest nil budget in the all of the Big 12, then probably these guys that we're getting are guys that aren't being recruited by the top schools. So let's go over to these guys and develop the top tier, recruits that we're getting that are choosing us over blue bloods and things like that. And I get it. Like, you play, it's a new era of college football, play the best guy. And it's a lot of teams are going to be transfer heavy, but I think if you can't go out and buy the best transfers, which we can't, they're good, but you can't buy the best ones. Let's mix in some of these youth that supposedly are top 300 players in the entire country by every platform and recruiting outlet out there. But we don't seem to be doing that either because Gus seems to be playing favorites.
Yeah, not to move on to the Cincinnati game. This is not a question that is talking about the Cincinnati game, but maybe moving forward, it's like what I think I've been wondering. I certainly wondered it in the second half of the Florida game and multiple times before that. But it's just, when is enough going to be enough? Like, when are we going to see what other options we have at quarterback? I mean, what does the future look like at quarterback if we're not going to get the W's this season, right? Like, even if it's just like as stagnant as KJ was, especially like second quarter on this game, it just seemed like he couldn't get anything going. And it wasn't just him not being able to throw the ball. It just seemed like the offense couldn't get going with him in there. Like, there is a credence to like taking him out and just seeing, like, having him watch a possession on the sideline while Ja'Cory Brown goes in there and maybe provides a spark. And it doesn't mean that you have to take him out the rest of the game. It just I'm wondering when we're gonna, like, when is enough going to be enough, and we're going to see that.
And Ben, I always try to reference that. Look at Jalen Milroe right now on Alabama. He got benched last year versus USF.
Mm-hmm.
And Alabama's like, look, you're not the answer right now. We're trying to win a national championship. That like, you're not going to help us do that. We're in a dogfight with USF. Like, that's not acceptable at Alabama. That should be the exact same thing. KJ, we should not struggle versus some of these teams that we're struggling against. And if it's just you sit for, like you said, a drive, sometimes maybe even just a quarter or even a whole game, just to see, like, listen, it's not guaranteed. You aren't just, I don't know how much money he's making. I know you're paid to play, but you have to produce. You're paid to produce. That's ultimately what you're paid to do, is produce. Like, you can play all you want, but if you're not doing anything great, we need to see the young guys. And I don't know, to me, it's one of two things. Either Gus is just going to die on the hill, which, okay, I understand that. Like, listen, this is the guy you feel is the best, and you want to run it. or Ja'Cory Brown is just not that good. I find it. I don't know what the answer to it, to be honest, is, and that's what's baffling to me is we've sat here through 5 games. We maybe have one half of KJ playing good football in 5 games, and it was the second half of TCU, and it exactly. And to be honest, that's an anomaly because we've been down by 21 points for besides the 2 games that we should easily win. TCU, Colorado, and Florida, we've been down 21 points at halftime, all 3 games. So maybe this is just what KJ is, and we need to see something different. But I don't. It's frustrating to me, Ben. To answer your question, I don't see why we wouldn't make a change now. I don't see why we wouldn't, because again, we have a 5-game sample size. We gave him the grace. Okay, maybe he's working out his jitters the first game. Then game 2, he looked better, but you still see him sailing passes and missing passes, and the receivers aren't helping. I will say that, but you see the same thing. And then TCU, that first half, I'm like, he needs to be benched, but he kind of saved it. He saved himself in the second half. But Colorado, it was just, to me, I'm just like, this is unacceptable.
But
And
go
ahead.
What even plays did he make in the besides the maybe last drive of the TCU game? And the play that I'm really thinking of that he made was a quick slant hit to Kobe after he faked the handoff. What plays did he really make in the TCU second half that I can recall at this point that were such a difference maker in the game? He handed the ball to RJ Harvey and he did his thing.
Yeah. The 2 throws to Kobe back to back, the bomb, and the one right after that was also good. And this is a point I was going to say earlier, but I'll throw it in there and then we can get back to ripping everyone. You want to know when this offense looks like the amazing offenses we are used to? It's when they don't substitute. And I know they're not going to do that it's not Frost anymore. They're not going to do that the entire series. But when we get a little thing going, don't substitute and keep pressing, we are doing really, really good. So either we can't get the calls in fast enough to actually play the hurry up that we need to, even though we have the in-ears for the helmet, or the team can't have the stamina to do that for a series. And either way is pretty much unacceptable. But anyone who's analyzing that film has to see it. When we don't substitute and we keep the personnel, and even if we do the same 6 plays that we're going to do anyway, if we're going to just do, run between the A gap, jet sweep, wheel route, some bomb over someone's head, some skinny post or whatever. If we just do those 3 to 5 plays every so often with maybe even a screen, if we can throw the ball to RJ, we're probably scoring most of the time. And it kills me when I see them substituting out for what the layperson seems no good reason when we have momentum on the drive over and over and over again. When we stick to that personnel, it floors me. So anyway, back
Josh,
to you.
I have an honest question.
Oh, we lost you there, Trey.
No. This is what we get for having Trey in the car, having dinner way too late. So, yeah, it's we'll get back to Trey. It does floor me, and at some point, the fan base is already kind of over it. How long are we going to go through this game too? It's just I'm hoping we provide some new insights or things you haven't heard, because the reality is we all feel the same way. It's kind of this.
Yeah. In the second half of the game this past Saturday night against the Gators, it just seemed like whenever their offense needed a few yards to get a first down, on third down, for instance, they got it. They figured out a way to get it. And whenever we needed that on third or fourth down, because at that point we were just going for it on fourth down as well, whenever we needed that, we're so predictable that we just didn't get that. It was okay, this is either going to be a run up the middle from KJ or it's going to be a run up the middle from RJ. And Florida had enough to stop that one play, two options on the same play. Like they had enough there. So whenever we like needed a few yards to get a first down, we could not do that. And then on the flip side, they were able to do that. So go ahead, Trey. I think we might be able to hear you now.
Y'all can you hear me? So I went through a bad area head home. Josh, the question I had was,
sure,
like, take away the first two games versus Sam Houston and teams we should easily handle. When over 3 games, when has our offense just looked dominant?
Looked what?
Like dominant. Like the
third quarter of TCU. That's it. Third quarter of TCU. It's not even the fourth quarter.
Like that's it, right? So like
that's it.
Is our offense? I honestly think like just over this 5 games, all of these stats are getting carried by the first games in that quarter. That's it.
Oh, 100%.
I haven't seen any explosive play. I mean, outside of maybe one. I don't see it with the offense. I don't see it. I don't see any explosiveness. I don't see any dynamic players. Like I don't see it. I don't even like. And I think we have it. I know we have it with RJ. I think Kobe Hudson can be that. But I don't see it. Like, when has that ever been a problem where, okay, we have the talent, but we can't utilize it. We can't showcase the talent. Even last year when we had our problems, Javon Baker still looked like he still made the plays. Like, it's never been that anemic. So go ahead.
So I was going to say one thing, and this is deep, Alan, but I'd love for you to get this, and it'd be kind of interesting whether it's here or on socials. How many explosive plays have we had that weren't wheel routes? Because that is the only play where we can consistently get significant yards almost all the time. Other than a 50-50 ball bomb to Kobe Hudson, that's it. You sprinkle in some Pittman Jr., right? He does get his, and he should. He's really good, and we'll see if he's here next year. But that's it. Again, take the first 2 games. We all agree there. It's 50-50 balls and wheel routes. And if Kobe can't get separation, we're not getting 50-50 balls. Our entire offense is hoping we can get the run game going in wheel routes, which is, I'm not saying an extension of the run game, but seriously, it works all the time.
To me, that the problem though that's the play calling, like you said. I mean, it's if Gus did other things, we have the personnel, we have enough talent to do. I mean, think of it this way: like the first drive of the Florida game, we got the field goal and we sliced right through them and got to the red zone, no problem, on all of our crappy plays that we call over and over again. So it makes you think, like, if they were to call some modicum of different type of, plays that were a little, just not as predictable. We were sitting there in the stands calling the plays. I swear to God, like me and a couple of UCF fans were calling the plays. Like if we were to do things were a little bit different, it makes you think that the talent is enough that it would turn into those explosive plays. And Trey, you're right. Like there hasn't been any explosive plays in the teams that have pulses, but I think that's the play calling. Like, I'm sure, there's still somewhat of a talent, issue, but still you think this offense last year, we saw it. There was plenty of times there was explosive plays, and yes, you had guys like Baker and whatever, but like if they were to call a little bit different, or maybe even just put in a different quarterback with the same crappy plays, I think it could just get dramatically better. Maybe not to the fullest potential that it could be, but it's a big problem is the play calling and the fact that we keep sticking with the same guy that can't do anything.
And the thing is, like Alan, like you're saying, if you're calling the plays out in the stands, what do you think guys who have studied all week are saying about the offense? Like, when it's your job to know the defense, and I know, apparently we don't do it because Colorado, we just didn't care to look at the game plan. But a normal team is going to study, look at the game plan, and deep dive in the film. When your offense is this basic, it might catch you off guard with a little wrinkle early, but over the course of the game, and I've said this about Gus's offense, it's a lot of window dressing. It's a lot of bells and whistles, but what he's running is simple. it's just a lot of motion to try.
Well, we just lost you there again, Trey. But like and I've heard Trey say that numerous times, which is right. You know, like it's a lot of window dressing and all that. But like I almost feel like, just from my fan perspective, not having the football background that Trey does and others, but like it almost seems like that window dressing isn't even there this year. Like it seems like there is no disguises, there is no motions pre-snap, like not as much. I mean, they're very simple motions if they are. And so, you know, that's another thing that we're just not seeing, even out of this season versus other seasons with Gus. And, you know, perception starts to become reality at a certain point. Like, and my perception of KJ has just been like, not only does he seem to only respond to a very simplified version of the playbook, but it also appears that, I mean, it just looks like he's out of shape out there. Like it looks like he doesn't have the physical, like, unless he's running the ball about 6 yards, 7 yards, and he's running a DB over, right? Like that's one of the things that he can do. But kind of even in that same reason why he can run a DB over seems like why he's like out of breath most of the time during the games. He just doesn't seem like he's in the best physical shape. And I don't know, again, we're not in the locker room. We don't know what's going on with KJ. Like maybe he's got some sort of injury going on or whatever, but like it just doesn't seem like he's in the best physical shape. And then on top of that, the decision making isn't there. It's like, what's going on with this quarterback that let's be frank, in this era, we paid a lot of money to come play quarterback for UCF.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, KJ, I guess we're getting into this now. I mean, to me, he's been one of the biggest overhyped busts in UCF history as far as just a transfer, or, you know, at least when you have a freshman that's overhyped and you're so excited about, they just may never see the field and then you kind of just forget about them. But like, this is a guy that is the starting quarterback, the most important position in sports, the guy that is the engine of the team, and was billed as potentially going to have one of the best seasons of any UCF quarterback. Like that was said multiple times by multiple people, had comparisons by our own head coach to Cam Newton, which I know he uses that a little bit too loosely, but he did. And he can't throw simple routes, or like you said, Ben, maybe there's injuries, maybe there's things we don't know, but and I get there's reasons to stick with him. Maybe it's the money thing and all that. Maybe he is legitimately the best quarterback on the roster. I think I put this in my stories today that we haven't even, I think, talked about that possibility that he actually still could be. Like maybe Ja'Cory Brown isn't that good and the three other guys are so young that they would be worse. But like at some point, try to do something to provide a spark. I have to think that even in small bursts, some of these guys could be better. I mean, they're sitting there watching every game. They're probably, some of these guys have been in the program, like Dylan Rizek, for over almost 2 years now. They probably know the playbook a little bit better. You would think there could be a potential spark here. And I get the reasons to potentially stick with KJ. You have that thing. You just spent the most money on him, the team. You feel obligated almost just from a financial standpoint. But at some point, when you go, these results are not going to change with the same guy over and over.
I've heard that argument made by numerous different. I've heard it made by UCF fans. I've heard it made from my friends who are FSU fans, was speaking about their own quarterback. And I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that you're making that argument, Alan. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I am disagreeing with that notion slightly, though, because like I almost feel like, if you're going to say, oh, well, we paid him all this money, so we have to play him, it's like, who says you have to play him? Like, I mean, if he's not doing what you paid him all that money for, it's just a bad investment. And so at this point, the coach has to look out for himself and say, I need to play somebody who's going to put us in the best position to win, because winning is the only thing that increases my chances of holding on to a job for a long time. And so, I say, maybe that does, with that type of notion in mind, maybe it comes back to what you just said, Alan, is that the unfortunate reality might be that KJ, as far as what they're seeing in practice to, to make that type of change may be too far of a stretch because they're not seeing enough from the other guys. But I don't know, man. I know the most popular position in, in college football is the backup quarterback. Yeah. And so we might be looking at that from a fan perspective, but I think more or less forget that at this point. I think we're as fans of UCF, we're just looking for something to provide this team a spark. And it just doesn't seem like this current personnel is going to be able to provide that spark. And it starts with KJ, because if there's no change to the quarterback position, and certainly the coaching isn't going to change, like, how is RJ ever going to shine again? Like, how is Kobe Hudson ever going to shine again? Like, where are we going to get the ability for our playmakers to make plays if KJ either can't get them the ball or can't run the offense efficiently enough where they can shine? And that's an issue, obviously, if you're a UCF fan, like we all are. So, so diehard UCF fans.
Yeah, 100%. Well, yeah, look, at the end of the day, I think something has to change. Like you said, yeah, why can't you switch it out? And even if he is the best quarterback, I still think it's worth. You could always go back, right? You could always go back to him. If the other 3 or 4 quarterbacks on the roster are that morbidly bad where they make KJ look like Cam Newton, then fine, go back to KJ. But try something, because this guy has what, in the 3 games that are real games, he has 4 touchdowns and 3 picks and completing like 50% of his passes. His QB rating is awful. I mean, it's just and then talk about rushing. He's not really, there's been a couple instances of him of bowling people over, but like, he had negative 16 yards in this last game rushing. He got stopped on 4th and 1. He got stopped multiple times. He looks slow. He looks out of shape. So I just feel like there's an opportunity to try someone else, even if it's for a few series. Like you can spin that if you really are worried about, I don't know, his feelings or the money or whatever. You could spin it like, hey, we're trying to get something going during the game. We're going to go back to him or something. And it just doesn't seem, that Gus is willing to do that. And we saw the same stubbornness with JRP, granted, who's looking freaking amazing right now. I would kill for JRP back, but the same stubbornness existed, and it feels like it's going that direction with KJ. But if you guys want to continue to talk about KJ, we can, or we can move on to the next topic.
I think we need to move on. We're an hour and 7 at this point, and just thrash it. As much as I want to talk about it, just and you love JRP, right? But would we have him at this game at this point? Right? Would Colorado or UF would have already put him in the injury room, which is part of the problem. So I think we need to move on. As much as we have now say we have something to look forward to, but let's see how the podcast takes it, everyone.
Yeah. Well, all right. Just some key stats before we move on to the next topic. KJ 12 of 22, 165 yards, only 7.5 yards per pass, 0 touchdowns and a pick. Harvey still had a solid game as the only, person that had life on the offense. 16 rushes for 75 yards, scored our only touchdown in the game. Also had 35 receiving yards. Penny Boone was 8 for 42 yards. Randy Pittman, our leading receiver, with 3 receptions for 44 yards. Excuse me, Johnny Richardson actually was with 5 receptions for 38 yards. He seemed to, pretty much take over the Xavier Townsend role and looked pretty good. I mean, he had limited touches, but looked good in the slot. And I think he had one of those wheel routes, took over for Townsend just fine. Ethan Barr was our leading tackler with 7 tackles, had a tackle for loss. Lee Hunter had 6 tackles. Mac McWilliams had 5 tackles and 1 tackle for loss. Overall, we were outgained 359 to 273 yards by the Gators. We had 6 penalties. We had 1 turnover and forced no turnovers, which is also becoming a theme. And we were 4 for 12 on 3rd downs. So just not pretty stats all around. But moving on, we talked about obviously KJ, just another thing on him. His PFF ranking was 59.4, which is considered below average. Was one of the worst on the team offensively. I think we talked about all the problems in the game, that fourth quarter drive, the lack of urgency, the offensive line. Let's move to maybe one level of positivity here. Thoughts on the defense? Are you encouraged by that second half shutout? I mean, they literally didn't give a point, and they only had Florida was only able to gain 93 yards in the second half, and we actually won the time of possession battle also in the second half. Was that kind of just an empty kind of thing, or were you encouraged by the defense? Who, if you think about it, they gave our team a chance to win with 0 points. The offense had multiple opportunities to come back and win this game because the defense did their job, or was that just kind of false hope?
I'll even say the defense was pretty decent the whole game. I mean, if we hold any, we're going a little back here, but if we held any team to 24 points, we're usually doing well. And that's why I say the offense is really so much more of the problem, because the offense gave the defense nothing. Yes, the first drive was 6-8 minutes. Okay, let's, scripted plays. You've studied our defense. You know what to do. But the offense did not give them any favors in any way, shape, or form in a game where there was no real turnovers. So I think the defense is, I will say I'm cautiously optimistic about the defense. And the sad part is, in the first time in forever, I have no idea what this offense is going to do at all. And it might just be offensive for the rest of the year. I don't know. But if the offense gets their act together and the defense does a fraction of what we saw, or decent fraction, how about that? I think we're good. It floors me that the offense is the problem, but I do think the defense did a wonderful job, and they did give the offense the opportunity to get back in this game. And you blew it, right? The right, you blew it.
If the if the tables were turned and we were let's just say and I'm sure you guys know a few, you might have been sitting next to a few, but like, UF fans had to be kind of nervous in the entire second half, because if I'm them, I'm saying, wow, we're just letting this team hang around. Mm-hmm. And normally when you say that, you kind of like they're making a little bit of progression on the offensive side. But for us, it was our defense was making the stops that they needed to. And so yes, I feel like the defense, for the most part, throughout the entire game, did their job, with the exception of getting them off the field in third down, I would say, in the first half. But also, and I can't find it, but I'm pretty sure while we won the time of possession in the second half, it was like god awful the other way around in the first half. I mean, it was
like 20 to 10.
Really, it was very like close. Really bad. And so we were our defense was on the field that entire first half because our offense was that anemic, and they gave up, like you said, they gave up 24 points. That's obviously with 24-3 at halftime. I mean, if you extrapolate that out over two halves, that's not a great outcome. Even worse than much worse than what we saw the final score to be. But I mean, we're down a couple scores in the fourth quarter there with 4 minutes to go, and we ran like, what was it? What was the stat? Like 6 plays or something like that?
I think it might have been 4 plays.
It was four plays with 2 minutes to go, right? It was 2 minutes to go, and we ran 4 plays, and we're down 2 scores. It's just that's the kind of disappointment that you see from a play calling standpoint. Gus was even asked today. He was even asked in his press conference today, how do you improve the speed of the play calling coming in? And his answer was, well, we just got to improve the speed of the play calling coming in. And again, I'm not going to. I've said it a few times in this podcast. I'm not going to completely knock Gus Malzahn for not revealing everything. It's almost his body language when he's saying those things, because it goes back to what all three of us have said, is that it just doesn't feel like he has the answer. Whether he wants to say the answer or not, it just seems like he doesn't have the answer in his preparation and his discussion with his coaches, like he doesn't have the answer to like get the plays in better. Like because the answers are in the press conferences are so, don't appear to be thought out at all. It just makes you wonder and question whether or not he has the answer at all. And that's just what makes it upset. But, getting back to the defense, I mean, we saw some good things on the defensive end. I wish we could figure out a way to get more pressure on the quarterback and make the quarterback more uncomfortable during the game. I think that's the biggest thing. Lee Hunter talked a lot about how, man, these quarterbacks are just getting the ball out so fast. Well, if they're getting the ball out so fast because we're putting pressure with our front four, like, shouldn't that put us still at an advantage? Because they're having to make quick decisions, meaning like we should be pretty close to our defense, the person that we're defending in the second two levels of our defense. And so I don't buy that like a team can just throw fast on us, like get the ball out fast and just be extremely successful, because every team would do that.
And well, we should just not, if they're going to do that and it's not run, just drop 9. I mean, but
right.
the like what they try to do with us, if we're not running the ball, and they know it's a passing play, he knows he's not revealing it, and I 100% agree with you. I appreciate that, but how? Is he just good? If nothing changes, is he just going to evade for the next what? How many games do we have a potential to lose? 7? What are we going to do in the next 7 games? Like, I will tell you, the after game press conference was one of the most direct it's been in a while. Trace had some hard hitting questions. And Brandon from ucsports.com. He asked his first question. He gets the privilege of the first question. He's been there 20 plus years and just zipped his lip. If you haven't noticed, he was like, and it was not good. And this is probably the toughest Gus has had to have it since he's left Auburn. And that's way more of a pressure cooker than this. But now we're getting to that point. So he has to figure it out, right? Something has to change. And this is why I'm hoping we get to play Cincinnati, because if we can't figure out a way against Cincinnati, it's over. I mean, you got to call it, right? The patience.
Cincinnati this year is a better team than Florida is.
I know
from an execution standpoint, they are,
and they're probably our easiest one
bad
left.
team. I'm not saying that. Well, I was going to say they're not Houston, but Houston just went on the road, right? I'm not saying they're a bad team in any way, shape, or form. What I'm saying is that a litmus test should be a team we have beaten a few years in a row outside of and have close. It's been good games. If it's not a close, good game like it has been for a while, that's the litmus test. And I know they've already had a bye week last week. Don't get me started there. But that's it. I mean, if you lost the fan base already, and somehow Cincinnati blows you out at home, no, you're just not going to get half of your. You're not going to get anyone coming to the games. More than likely.
Yeah.
A lot of people selling tickets.
Oh, tickets are going to be cheap even for the Cincinnati game, I imagine.
Well, they already were.
Yeah.
So. Be fair.
Yeah, so it's an interesting scenario. I think our defense played well enough to keep us in it, and that's a positive note. I think that there are still a lot of question marks on this defense, though. In particular, it's can we get home on the quarterback? Like, can we provide any type of pressure to make him even uncomfortable? The sacks aren't going to be there. Are we going to make him uncomfortable enough to, provide some errant throws, which we just haven't seen it. Like, the turnovers are down. We don't have any sacks. Like, it's just, it hasn't been as promising as we once thought it would be with this defense. But they are, I will say again, which we all have said, is that it's we haven't done them any favors on the offensive end of the ball.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. I mean, just to follow up on that, I mean, yeah, I was encouraged by what the defense did. I think that was probably their best showing so far. I mean, I think that's the only time they've completely shut out, a team in an entire half. And the fact that they did it against Florida on the road is impressive, even if it is a bad Florida team. So, hopefully that brings some momentum, but we just haven't seen it consistently enough to have confidence. And then even if they are playing well, you just don't think it's like Josh, like you said, a team. If you told me before the season that Florida scored 24, I would have said it'd be 100% won the game. Not even a question. But with the offense playing how it is, I don't know if the defense, even if they start playing lights out, it's going to be enough, maybe in a couple of games, but not as consistently. But moving on to the next thing. So we talked about this for a couple of weeks now. Why aren't the young guys playing? We talked about it today, obviously, but we did actually have a couple of young guys finally play, and it was something that was kind of forced because of injuries as well as opt-outs, which we'll get into in a little bit. But Chasen Johnson, one of the guys that actually had been playing in small amounts actually since week one, has played in every single game, but got his first true meaningful reps and made a couple of big plays on defense. If you recall, he was one of our highest rated DBs in the 2024 class, a guy that got his name called out multiple times in off-season camp as a guy that could play immediately, as someone that called Gus a real guy, and someone that was, expected to play, but ultimately was kind of more so playing like garbage minutes, playing on special teams. But with the opt-outs, played significant amount of snaps and ended up not only having the second best PFF score on defense for UCF, but was also named to the Big 12 PFF Team of the Week for one of the DB spots. So he played and excelled in his first true extended minutes. Then Quay Birdsong played as well, who's also from the 2024 class. And then Ziri Alexander, who has played in every single game in pretty meaningful snaps, but probably, had his best game. And he's definitely one of the younger guys. He's a sophomore, a guy that transferred in after a pretty standout freshman year at Idaho, had our best PFF score out of all the defensive players. And then Isaiah Nixon, someone that was very highly regarded, I think it was the 22 class, also saw his first extended minutes in a real game this year. And what did he have? The third best PFF score. So when you talk about should the young guys be playing, and you have to trust that Gus is playing the best guys. Well, it looks like he wasn't, at least in this small sample size. That could all change. They could have, horrible freshman mistakes next week or whatever. But the three guys, younger guys on the team that are playing, had the three best scores, at least PFF wise. And I remember Chasen Johnson making some really nice plays there. So any thoughts on that, guys?
I mean, it's good to have a youth movement there on defense. I mean, and like you said, I mean, we've probably got the best chance with continuing to attract high-level high school recruits if we start to see them with playing time here at UCF. And so I give a little bit of credit to Ted Roof and Gus Malzahn that they decided to play these guys. Chasen Johnson, especially, he's somebody that we talked about before this season started as somebody who we had heard a lot of rumblings about of doing really well in camp and standing out. I'm glad he got his chance in extended minutes, and he clearly showed out. And so that's great to see. It's interesting, and I know we're going to get to it, is some of the, examples of that we saw on the offensive side, but really the offensive side wasn't good overall, as we've talked about, till we're blue in the face so far of the show. But it's great to see that promise on the defensive end. And hey, maybe that type of energy was a positive for us in that second half, especially, but really the whole game at Florida, mean, it's a tough environment to get your first extended minutes as a young player. And so they clearly showed out, and hopefully they continue to get those reps in upcoming games, especially one at home coming up this Saturday, because obviously it's a totally different environment. And so we'll see what happens moving forward, but it was good to see those young guys show out.
I will say one thing on the youth and about the environment too. I'm excited to see some of these players play. I still want to see Burdell Richardson, but that's just me. I am, well, maybe if Javarius Johnson really did that awful, it might get that as well. Although I assume Richardson, Johnny would be getting most of or some of that, especially on the jet sweeps. But I think I saw at least one. But I feel like at some point you have to push all your chips in. We're not going all in yet, right? It's like we're sitting on like 7-8 suited, and we're like, this could be good, but it just depends on what happened on the flop. And right now the flop is not looking that great. I feel like the youngins are like pushing some of these chips and going, okay, I'm gonna bet on it and try to make this pot bigger, because if we do well, we might get a payoff. And I feel like this might be hopefully a little bit more of a push of that too. We'll see what happens. And if you play Texas Hold'em, at least that was a good analogy. To the environment, here's the deal. At no time did I think that stadium was louder than Cincinnati at game day. At no time did I think that stadium was louder than literally Colorado for the first few minutes, right? It's a nice stadium. It's concrete. I'm not going to be that type of fan. It's nice. We actually have more pyro, I think, at this point. It's a cool place. It was nice to be there at night, not in the middle of the day in 2006. But I will tell you, all we needed to do was tie that game. The fans were there to show out, the UCF fans, and it just never got loud minus one or two real plays. I like that level loud, which is weird because I know it wasn't a legit sellout. There was definitely upper decks that were nice and silver, but that's okay. I mean, they sold the tickets, but it wasn't fully packed. It was really, really full. And I love our stadium sometimes for that. There's really no place for the sound to get out. And when the fans are into it, it's great. And this is why the fans have always won the tailgate. The fans always win in the stands. And this team needs to start winning on the football field.
Yeah. No doubt about that. All right. I guess, going into the final kind of things about this game, because we've obviously beat it with a dead horse here, but,
Yeah.
The news kind of broke earlier this week that Colton Boomer is ultimately redshirting and going to be one of those 6 transfers, which we'll talk about. I think a big loss in name, someone that the fan base really got behind over the last 2 years, but someone that, struggled a lot last year and was struggling this year outside of, I think, the first game. Apparently he also has an injury, but I think he's obviously parlaying that into the opportunity to redshirt and transfer, which is why we saw Grant Reddick, be the starting place kicker and kickoff guy in the Florida game. And, early signs were great. He went 2 for 2, was one of the lone bright spots in the game, went 2 for 2 from field goals. I think, granted, they were both under 40 yards, but still nailed them both. And then also nailed his extra point attempt. So it was a perfect 3 for 3 on the day. So, good start. He was a guy that had a lot of hype. I mean, he was considered a 5-star kicker. There's not like Rivals and 247 don't rank kickers, but there are outlets that do. And he was considered the number 1 kicker in the nation, if that is a legitimate, outlet that really does all that. But, either way, good start for him. And I think Colton Boomer just kind of went down south over the last, year plus. And it did not seem like it was getting better, whether it was the yips or whatever it was. So maybe it was time for a new kicker. But that was, something really, really good to see. With that, I want to get into our week 6 score predictions. I don't really see them here on the sheet, guys, but I want to say that I was the closest, given that I said 27-13 and it was 24.
You didn't put it on. You were not official. The official, if you're going by real official, by what we said on the podcast, not what we said in the side chat, I think Ben's going to win it because he was the closest, the lowest of the 2 scores. If we're really doing it, I think Ben won.
I mean, I did say it in the group chat prior to the game, though. So
yeah,
I think
that's not podcast official. That's you have the viewers, the listeners, they have to believe you. And honestly, I'm not saying Alan's wrong. I'm saying he didn't say it on the podcast. So, well, you know what, Roger, whenever you listen to this and come back onto the podcast, well, I wouldn't say get you official blessing, but I think Ben deserves the anti-dub for that.
Yeah, the anti-dub. Yeah, I at one point I was like, it was 21. It was 21-3 at that point, and I was like, well, I have we could come back and I could make it that in reverse. But yeah, 21-20 UCF was my prediction from last week, and outside of Alan's prediction, because he would have been the only one on the podcast that predicted us to lose, rightfully.
Yeah.
Rightly picked us to lose, I guess. I guess I was the closest of the wrong scores, but doesn't feel too good. I kind of said last week that they may convince me not to pick them in following weeks, and that may occur this week. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yep. Fair enough. All right. Well, next up, we do have Cincinnati pending this massive Category 5 hurricane, which I would say has more than a good shot to postpone the game. In the history of hurricanes that are during UCF football season, I've never seen an in-conference game get canceled. They've been postponed. Like the Memphis game was played on a different week. And there was a couple other games that I recall. If it was out of conference, I think it would be canceled, but I would assume they would either find a different week or, maybe we end up going up to Cincinnati and playing there instead. And then they come to our house 2 years in a row. I don't know. I would assume conference games don't get canceled, but let's hope it doesn't. Let's hope that the hurricane turns or whatever, but it's not looking great considering that UCF has already canceled most of the Olympic sports, I think tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. You would assume there would be some aftermath, even if the storm is done by Saturday, where it'd make it quite hard to play. But let's pretend that it does happen. We're opening up as a 3-point favorite. For some reason, we have been favored in every opening line this entire season, which is just mind-boggling. I don't know what Vegas sees that the rest of the population on Earth doesn't see.
They're not watching the games.
Usually I like to say Vegas is always right, or they're right most of the time, but I don't know. We open as a 3-point favorite. I'm sure that line will flip pretty quickly if you're a avid bettor. But the Bearcats, they have the same exact record as us. They are 3-2 overall, 1-1 in the conference. They've beaten Towson, Miami of Ohio, so 2 kind of similar wins to us. And then they also beat Houston, so a crappy Big 12 team. We beat a crappy Big 12 team.
We does too.
But the difference is they only lost to Pitt by 1, and Pitt is one of the 12 remaining undefeated teams in the country. And then they lost to Texas Tech by 3. So they have been significantly more competitive than we have. They're coming off a bye week this week, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Probably bad because we're playing them. But yeah, I mean, really, guys, the question is, the storylines are the same as they've been essentially for the past 2 weeks. We know the problems of the team, and it's basically, will any of those get better? Will KJ play better? Will the coaching staff be better? Can we rely on the passing game? Can we get more pass rush? Can we get sacks? Will we do anything new offensively? But I guess the question comes back down to, can we get back on track? I mean, Josh, like you said, I do think Cincinnati is a winnable game. We circled it as a winnable game prior to the season. We did expect Cincy to be worse at this point, but even so, they in theory, are on an even playing field as us. They're second year in the Big 12. We beat them the last 2 years in a row. They struggled mightily last year. We ended up, I think, being the worst or second worst team in the conference record wise. And we beat them on the road last year. And then, we get them at home potentially this year.
Yeah.
So can we get back on track in what should be technically a winnable game?
So are we going straight to yes, no, and predictions, or just chatting about it? Because
you can chat about it, whatever you want.
About it. Look, so here's the thing. Here the problem we have yet again is that they have a QB worth of pulse. Brendan Sorsby's already thrown for 1,400 yards, right? 12 TDs and 1 interception.
12-1 interception or touchdown to interception ratio. That dude is legit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we have a QB that's worth something, right? And the interesting part is like their receiving core. It's Xavier Henderson is pretty much it, and Joe Royer, who's the tight end. All the other wide receivers have like 12 or 11, and it's like, how deep are we? Tight ends and our one running back. We're about 10 different people receiving the ball for 12 catches or less this entire year. So they really only have, they're kind of like us. They have a wide receiver that is getting at it. And getting most of the touchdowns. They have a tight end that's getting at it, and the ball seems to be spreading around. We saw that the first half of the last game, and that wasn't fun. So their running backs are pretty solid too, but they're in the same kind of running back situation. The QB isn't running a ton, which honestly this year is not as much of an issue as it was in previous years. Like previous years, running quarterback would just destroy us. Right now, unless you're design QB runs doing not so great, QB scrambling and making things happen, always not wonderful. But the reality is that this is a team that they have a pulse and they're good at passing the ball, and that's the problem. We need people who just really stink at this point. What I think is going to happen the rest of the season, unless someone can light a fire under someone's derriere, is that we're going to go with the traditional Gus years we've always had. Beat the people we, quote, should beat. Maybe one ridiculous win over someone we shouldn't. Like maybe we blow out BYU at home or something, and which seems impossible right now. And that's our season. Maybe we get 6 wins. So this one is in the feels like we should have a good shot to win. / if we're down another 20 points in the first half, the wheels are falling off. So that's kind of what I'm feeling like right now.
Fair enough.
So statistically, it doesn't seem like Cincinnati has the best defense, but they have shown, at least according to our own team, our own coaches, like they've shown a lot of good fundamentals, and they're a solid defense overall, and they've shown up against some pretty good opponents in the sense of Pittsburgh, of course, and but offensively they seem like a team that we're going to have to keep up with, and that's what I worry about. Are we going to be able to score with them? Because their QB and wide receiver for sure are legit, and you're right, their tight end is good too. When did we last see a QB wide receiver tight end that really showed up? I mean, the TCU game was a great example of that. Yeah. Certainly multiple receivers in the Colorado game. It just seemed like that was this is an offense that we're going to give up some points against, and are we going to be able to keep up with them from our own offense, or keep them off the field with the right rushing attack, the right time of possession, and all that. So I think that's going to be a factor and come into play. It seems like we're going to be able to potentially move the ball on them if we can get our running game going, and our offensive line especially has a little bit better game. I think that if we get into a quote unquote shootout, at least the early going with this team, it's not going to bode well for us. It's not a team that gets any type of momentum. Obviously, we're going to have to jump out on them at home, and so it's going to be. We cannot get behind early. That's probably the biggest key. If we're talking about keys to the game, I think we can't get behind early.
So two things, and I'll just 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Two things. One, Alan and others talked about this 2 weeks in a row. We win the toss. Why are we deferring? We know what's going to happen if we get behind. It's happened twice in a row. I guarantee we're going to do it again next game. And then two, when's the last time a UCF team that any of us fans would have to say the statement, if we can score points and hang with them?
It's crazy, right? Like,
I would say probably 2015, because even 2016 it was a whatever burger of a year, but we saw the potential in Mackenzie and where that was going. It wasn't where it was going to go. Who knew that was going to happen? But even the last couple of years, with even when JRP got hurt in the last couple of years, when did we think we might not be able to score as much as the other team? There may not even be a shot of that. That's the thing. That narrative needs to change, and we'll see soon. Alan.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy to say. I mean, even under Gus, at times, like, I know we've complained obviously about his offensive play calling and the, how, I guess, vanilla it is or whatever, the same thing and predictable. But for the most part, Gus's offense in 3 years has been good. Whether it's, even if it's one-sided, it all comes from rushing. Either way, we have been a top, at worst, 30 offensive team statistically and otherwise. And this year, it doesn't, like, I've always thought that under Gus, it's nowhere near as explosive as Heupel or Frost, but I always was like, we're good for 35. We're every single week we're good for 35. Now I don't know. I think, I agree with Ben. I'll repeat it, but we have to get ahead immediately. There is no getting behind and coming back in this game, because I have no confidence that the passing game will be able to do anything. And clearly the coaching staff doesn't, because when we were down 11 with 2 minutes to go, we were still running the ball. So against Florida. So I don't think there is any passing game that exists. So if all we can do is run, we better pray that we have some explosive runs, get up to a 14-0 lead, and then just milk the clock with as many runs as we can, and pray we, complete a few passes when we have a couple third and longs or whatever the case may be. Because Cincinnati is good enough where, they're, maybe if against Houston or something, I'd feel differently. But against Cincinnati, I think if they jump out to a 21-point halftime lead, since that seems to be the theme over the past 2 weeks, I don't see
we're never coming back.
Yeah, we're not coming back. So
we are not going back.
Yeah, so
but it's just not happening. Yeah, we go down 14. I don't know if we can make it back up, which is it's mind-boggling,
because you have two players on this team, Kobe Hudson and RJ Harvey, who are two of the best we've ever had at the respective positions. And I know there's been a lot of good players at running back and wide receiver for UCF, but in the past decade, those are two of the best players. And we're literally wondering if we could, score 2 touchdowns, and which is just, it's crazy. But that just shows the importance of a quarterback. I mean, you see it NFL, college, when you lose your main guy. I mean, look at the Dolphins. I mean, stupid example, but just like, look at the decline, even when a guy that's not even considered a top 5 quarterback, someone that's a decent starter, and you go down to a bad quarterback, it changes the whole dynamic of the offense. And we're seeing that with UCF, like pretty much from JRP to KJ. I mean, JRP was considered a mid quarterback, going to someone like, to KJ who can't throw right now or maybe ever. And it's so we're going to have to completely rely on the run game. And I would say our only saving grace is playing at home. But like I said earlier, I'm not sure that we're the home field advantage that we once were, now that we're under Gus. So I think we can win this game. I have a shred of hope that the players, the team are mad and that they want to figure it out. Even as much as we've seen the dejection on the sidelines and lack of leadership and all the things that we've taught, all the former players like Trey have talked about, I have to think as competitors, despite them being paid and all that now, that they want to win. They're still playing for NFL looks and things like that.
Yeah.
Or that next contract in college or whatever. So I'd have to think that they want to win, and the feeling that they have now in the last 2 games is eating them. I would think if it's eating me as a fan, I'd hope it's eating the player. But I just don't know.
One of the guys that we haven't mentioned much, if at all, on this show is, and I think has actually been a bright spot, and I'd like to see him utilized more, is Randy Pittman. I mean, I feel like Randy Pittman, every time his number is called during the game, whenever we need a big catch or a big play, like he has always come through. I mean, it kind of goes to show you, again, we're talking about scheme, we're talking about play calling. It's like, why aren't we getting a guy like that more involved, especially when he's a tight end? You know, it's not like he's the type of player that a guy like KJ has to throw 25 yards down the field to get involved in the game. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It just seems like more quick hitting passes to get KJ in rhythm, and getting Randy Pittman involved could help with that. I'd like to see a little bit more of that this game and moving forward as well.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, that's a thing. It feels like as basic and vanilla as UCF's offense has been, there's still more basic plays that we could do that would actually help. Like you think these quick slants and things like that utilizes guys like Randy Pittman, or using Johnny Richardson more out of the slot for just quick outs. I mean, as a team that's billed as a fast hurry up offense, we're the slowest freaking offense there is. They
molasses.
I'm worried about them using the play clock every time. Like, you start taking advantage of the athletes, the Florida athletes that you have. Do some slants, do some little ripples like that. That we don't have to get, tricky and do a bunch of BS tricky plays that people don't like, or, Gus was once famous for, whatever. Just do some stuff other than the jet sweep and do a QB draw with KJ. Just do a couple more things, and I think it would make a big difference.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I just, unfortunately, and it might be KJ. We're not fast. This is not UCF fast, nor fierce maybe, but slightly. But it's definitely not fast, and that's why we're seeing success, like visually seeing success when we keep people on the field. But there's obviously a reason we can't do that. There's a reason we didn't have a 2-minute offense. We just had sludge. There was 4 minutes left in that game. All we needed to do is get 1 touchdown or something. Touchdown at that point. Before the 2-minute warning, or somewhere around the 2-minute warning, we had the 3 timeouts. They would have gotten 3 runs. We would have gotten the ball back, and we would have had the opportunity to score. And it took 4 plays and 2 minutes. And just, I don't, you know what? At that point, let RJ Harvey be quarterback the entire last 4 minutes. If we can't do 2 minutes, a 2-minute drill, let's just do RJ. He knows how to still throw. It'll be RJ going up the gut. It'll be RJ going around the side. It'll be Johnny Richardson doing a jet sweep, and he'll run once, duck his knee down, go back and throw over the top on Kobe. Do something. I mean, do right. That was do something. This can't keep happening, and it can't keep happening.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it can't keep happening. That's right. So, guys, you want to give your score predictions here?
Sure. I'll go first if you'd like. It pains me to do this. First time. This is probably my 5th year of doing UCF podcasting. Probably the first time I've ever done this. I'm going to say it's 28-21 Cincy.
Okay. 21. Was it 21 what? 20?
28-21 Cincinnati.
Okay.
And I have never hoped I have been more wrong than saying those words out loud. I just think we fall behind by a touchdown or 10 points early, and it just kind of middles around, and you make an attempt, but 28-21 is my score.
Yeah. I'll say this. I will be quick about it. I'm going to probably be the last optimist on this podcast, but Gus, you get one game. If you don't win this game, no, sorry. I might not even show up at times, and I rarely do that. But I'd rather spend time with my kids than watch what I'm watching right here. 31-28 UCF.
31-28 UCF.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
don't ask me why.
I obviously predicted the loss last week, which was one of my first times. I've done it before, at times last year. I don't like what I've seen. Obviously, the last 2 weeks, I've said, I've lost all my faith in Malzahn. I just feel like this is, I don't even know if I'm even being positive here, but I'm just going to predict UCF to win. I just have like a little bit of a feeling that they're going to be able to pull this one off. And then I could easily see them ripping off like 3 straight losses right after that, which is what will happen. I think they pull this one out. Granted, now if the game gets moved somewhere like a neutral site or Cincinnati, then I would say my prediction is right out the window. Yeah. But I'm gonna say that the offense slightly gets back on track here, and I'm gonna go 28-20 UCF.
Yeah, I hope I'm right. I know, Ben, you hope you're wrong, but they can't. I mean, I'll tell you one game I will 100% be at BYU, and you should too, fans. You'll see at the game. But other than that, no, I just, especially if it's bad. Like if it, because many of you, dear gentle listener, might remember the UAB game at the end of the season back in the day. And some of you might have remembered Pitt, old Pitt, when we were in the Citrus Bowl, and most of you probably walked out at halftime then too. Yeah. If anything like that happens, the exodus is going to be huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's if we see what we saw the last 2 weeks this Saturday, like the fan base is gone. The season is done. The season's over. And I have never, again, I like legit, like you can run the tape from Nightline to this show to whatever. I have never spoken this way, but it's like the reality is that the fan base is going to like sour even faster than what they have over the last few days since the loss at Florida. I mean, this is a very important game for this season. And hey, I hope that we are just like turning it all around next week on this show because we saw something that was just totally different than what we've seen the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Well, I guess obviously Trey and Roger, we don't really have a prediction for them, so it'll be between us three if we're going what Josh said, that you have to officially do it on the pod. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully me and Josh are right. It is interesting, Cincy and UCF actually statistically have the second and third worst passing defense in the league, and have and then Cincy, we actually have one of the best rushing Ds statistically. And then Cincy actually has one of the worst, but offensively, Cincy is actually number 2 behind us in yards. So in theory, it could be a shootout, but I don't know. I don't know if if there's gonna be a lot of points, it's gonna be on Cincy's side, probably not ours. But
Cincinnati has racked up those yards to be number 2 behind us, like against arguably much better opponents than what we racked up all our yards on.
Yeah, that's
right.
Fair.
So
that's fair.
I mean, it could be a shootout, or it could just be Cincinnati dominating us, but we'll see. Other UCF news, we mentioned the opt-outs. As we mentioned, Colton Boomer did opt out. I think that was starting to get a little expected. He was someone that just had really been struggling, and he had dealt injuries last year, and he does have a legitimate injury this year that I've confirmed that it's not. I mean, he was going to probably opt out regardless, but he actually does have an injury again this year. Then we all know Xavier Townsend, by far the biggest name, I guess, other than Colton Boomer, or we're probably on equal footing there as far as consistent playmakers that have played over the past 3 years, those are the biggest names. All the other losses I would consider minimal. They're not huge. Caven Call, who was someone that was billed when we signed him as a high school recruit, as a 4-star guy that just never panned out, or Gus never tried him out. I guess we'll see in the next couple of years if he turns into a star like some former UCF guys have. William Wells, who was a guy that played infrequently at UCF. He was actually one of the few hypo recruits left on the team. Just a guy that didn't see the field too much. Can't really blame that. Wasn't someone that was going to see the field too much again this year. Then Byron Threats, who was actually part of this most recent transfer class, one of the 3 Cincy guys that transferred over, who actually got a significant amount of playing time in the Colorado game, but decided to opt out, I guess, didn't play. And then we also, I don't know if everyone saw it, but Lee Hunter ripped him a new one on Instagram for leaving. And that was one thing the entire fan base got behind. We needed something, and we all loved that. We're all like, yeah, Lee Hunter, you're the man for ripping a guy for quitting. Threats, I think prior to that Colorado game, hadn't been playing much. So it's probably a thing of just playing, which is surprising. He was pretty impactful at Cincy, not on the level of like Deshaun Pace, but someone that played a lot, but just wasn't getting playing time here. And the final one was another transfer in this most recent transfer class, offensive lineman Wes Dorsey, who, was a depth piece at best. He was a group of 5 transfer from, I think it was Central Michigan or one of those places. And he just was not really seeing the field. The O-line isn't really deep anyways. They're not really even playing rotating too many guys in and out. And he wasn't seeing the field. So I would consider the only loss really Townsend. Boomer wasn't playing that well, to be honest. I mean, name wise, it's a big name, but Townsend probably seems to be like the biggest loss. So with the new way of college football, 6 guys, I don't know if that is a lot more than other people in the country on average. I know, Ben, you said UF, you didn't think there was any, but I did see some guy, Alabama. I looked through, I just went on Google News earlier today, and I just typed in red shirt and I typed in transfer portal, and I saw Indiana, USC, Alabama, I think it was Michigan State, Iowa, all had guys that are decided to redshirt. So I don't think when people see this, they're going to look at the 2 losses and be like, oh, Gus is losing the team and all that. I don't put any stock into that. I think if we were undefeated right now, you would still see the same exact thing going on. Maybe not someone like Townsend if he was getting the ball a lot, but the other guys, I don't see how us being amazing right now would really change that tune. It's
Right.
just the new way of college football. So moving on, the Big 12 scores recap. A couple teams were on bye, but West Virginia beat OSU 38-14. OSU is now 3-3. They have completely toppled down. So one shred of optimism I will say is the 3 top expected teams, widely expected to be the best teams in the Big 12, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Utah already all have at least 1 loss already in the Big 12, and OSU has 3. So it is part of being in the Big 12. I think the bigger thing is just how we lost, which we've already gone over a million times. But Iowa State stayed perfect. They beat Baylor 43-21. Arizona State beat Kansas 35-31. Kansas looking like they're going to be the worst team in the conference if it's not us. Texas Tech beat Arizona 28-22. Someone Arizona will be playing later on this year. Houston continued to make the TCU loss just even worse. Beat TCU 30-19, and now TCU has not since they've gone 0-3 in the conference since losing to us in that first one. So that win is looking worse and worse by the day, especially when you considered we needed a prayer to win that one. Then the rest of the teams in the Big 12 run by, including Cincy and a few others, BYU. But we still have 4 Big 12 teams that are ranked. Iowa State is up to a number 11 in the country. And if they win again this week, we're looking at probably facing a top 10 team in the nation in 2 weeks from now. So buckle up for that blowout. BYU is up to number 14, who we play in, I think, 3 weeks. And they could, in theory, be a top 10 team too. Then Utah, who we also play, is number 16, and Kansas State is number 18. And obviously, Oklahoma State has completely toppled out of the rankings. Other than that, a small update, NFL, Jordan Akins scored a touchdown yesterday for the Browns. So that was cool. Jordan Akins still in the league almost 8-9 years after getting drafted. So that's cool to see, still being productive. With that, Josh, do you want to start with your sometimes funny fact of the week? Because I feel like I just did a couple segments and want to get someone else talking here.
Sure. Kind of interesting enough, we've been played, as most of we've played Cincinnati a few times, right? Same conference, moved up at the same time. So let's just take Cincinnati's playoff year out of the picture, because that's obviously, they're beating pretty much everyone. In 4 of the last 5 games versus Cincinnati, they were a little more competitive than that game and a couple of the earlier ones. So the over and under that I'm giving you is 17. Of those 4 other games, did we cumulatively get more than 17 or less than 17 points in 4 games between those two teams in the wins and losses? So if we lose 48-21, that would be obviously a 27 points of the over and under. In those 4 games, did we win or lose cumulatively by more than 17 or less than 17?
You talking about the differential? The
differential, point differential between the two teams.
In the 4 games, the last 4 games, we played them outside of the time they were in the playoff?
Correct.
So the score differential between the two. Okay, so basically, was it a close?
I'm trying to figure out a good way of stating that, But basically
was it a close game, or were they?
Are they closer games, or were they blowouts?
Well, last year was a very close game. It was I think 3 points or something like that. The year before that was also, I think we pulled away at the end, but that in 2022, RJ Harvey had that touchdown at the end. I think we would have won by 8 or 10. The year before that, was that the year they were in the playoff?
Correct.
They blew us out. Then there was a year with Dylan Gabriel where they beat us very. I'm going under 17 for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to say under 17 as well, because mainly just because of how close the last couple of games have been against them. So I'm going to say under 17.
Yeah, I should have won a little bit lower of a number. I tried to pump it up a little bit. 12 points between both teams outside of the playoff team. 12 points. They've been 3-point wins, 2-point wins, 3-point losses, 5-point loss, very, very, very close games. And they both have outliers where they blew us out in 2015 and we blew them out in 2017. But most of the games have been hyper competitive, which is why my prediction was a lot tighter than it has been in previous times, because I feel like there's a shot that this is going to be a pretty tight game. And honestly, I think the spread, I don't trust Vegas at this point with our team, but it is 3. So I feel like this is going to be another tight game. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, if it's a blowout, I hope it's on our end. But that's for
sure.
This is not that's what I want. The surprise blowout, I want that to be BYU or some other game. I don't want it to be this game. I'm okay with anything that looks like a competent offense at this point.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
You got your oxymoronic stat of the week?
Yeah, I got my stat of the week, and it's just basically about piling on to Gus right now is what this is about. But it's funny. It's Gus, I think, has been a solid coach, obviously, overall in the history of his career. I mean, obviously, he's well regarded in a national light, and he's had obviously success. He's been to a national championship game. He's been the national coach of the year. But that really all came in 1 year. The big part of his success came in his first year at Auburn, which was his second year as a head coach, because he coached 1 year at Arkansas State, where he went 9-3. The 9-3 year and with Arkansas State, and then the national championship season where they finished 12-2, are the only 2 times in his entire career that Gus has lost 3 games or less in a season. Every single other season he's been with Auburn and UCF, he's lost 4 games minimum. So it's funny that, he has a lot of national recognition, but he's really not. I'm not sitting there saying you're going to be undefeated or one loss, but to not even have, even one season other than let's say one Power 4 season where you have less than 3 wins, I think says something. And I know they play Alabama and Georgia and LSU every year and all that type of stuff, but Auburn was a power back then. To not even have one other season other than your first year where you win or when you lose less than 3 games, I think is pretty interesting and says something. And on top of that, I really tried to find what were his best seasons outside of that national championship, what kind of happened in those seasons. So I looked pretty much every year outside of a couple. They either started really strong and then had a losing streak, or started really bad and then had like some sort of end of the season renaissance. But there's never really any consistency with Gus other than inconsistency. So 2013, to finish the season, they lost 4 or 5 games that completely took them out of the race after starting really strong. In 2015, he goes on a 5-game winning streak middle of the season, loses 3 out of 4 of his games to finish the year. And tell me if this sounds very similar to what happened at UCF so far. Then in 2017, he loses 2 of his final 3 games, including the SEC championship and to UCF in the Peach Bowl. In 2018, he lost his 2 final SEC games. In 2019, they start out 5-0, are ranked in the top 10, and they go 4-5 the rest of the way out. 2020, he starts 5-2, loses 3 of his final 4. And then with UCF, 2022, we start out 8-2, and he loses 3 of his last 4. And then last year, we go on this midseason 5-game winning streak, and he wins 3 of his last 4. So it's just this repeated pattern in his coaching history where he just can't sustain the success. And I'm not saying there's a lot of coaches that can go on a 9, 10, 11, 12 game winning streak, but it just seems to be one of those things where they're right there on the cusp, and then he loses 3 out of 4, 2 out of 3, 4 out of 5 at just the most inopportune times. And that's really kind of defined his career and what a lot of things we heard from Auburn fans when he left for us, even though I know a lot of them, want him back now because they're just even worse. But that's the thing. Gus is never going to be 3-9, 4-8, but I just don't see him as a guy that's going to really be 10-2, 9-3 that often. And his record proves that.
Well, I think that some of that lack of consistency, like be able to like extend those winning streaks or have have sustained success throughout a season. I think it speaks to the scheme. Like I think that he gets figured out and exposed in the middle of the season, and then all of a sudden, when it rains, it pours. Like it just feels like that's what we're seeing here. And even going back to, and I didn't realize that was the case, that 12-2 was his last, time that he's had that small amount of losses. But obviously that's a really difficult thing to do is to, win 11, 12 games in college football. Sure. But by the same token, it even then, to your point, it seems like at that point they not only had electric players, but he hadn't been quite figured out as as a play caller on a national level, as far as from the head coaching standpoint. Obviously he had been offensive coordinator before and all that, but it may speak to that as well. It may speak to eventually as his scheme gets a little bit more exposure, it starts to get exposed. So
yeah, I think that's completely fair. That's the unfortunate truth with life under Gus Malzahn. Josh, do you want to finish up here with the quick update on sports I don't watch?
Yeah, and it's funny because not only are they sports you don't watch, there's so many things happening in the sports you don't watch this time. So yeah, absolutely. A couple of things to note on the sports you don't watch. First off, men's soccer. They lost to number 7 West Virginia. We're playing West Virginia all weekend last week. We lost 2-1. But again, we get an easier foe, Just kidding. We play number 5 Marshall at home on Friday, October 11th at 7 p.m. We'll see if that happens. That is still TBD. Now, women's soccer, they also lost up in Morgantown to West Virginia at 0-1. So here's what's interesting. They play Arizona next, but that's already been canceled. And I will tell you, I would not be surprised if you see this team playing that Arizona game in another state sometime this week. Just saying. Also, they will be at Colorado on Saturday on 2 p.m. Eastern coming up. Women's volleyball, they beat West Virginia. We got 1 out of 2, 3-0, and then lost to Cincinnati 0-3. They're playing at home against Iowa State on Friday, October 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern, and Colorado at home on Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern time.
All right. Well, that sums it up for UCF. Let's hope, everyone stays safe from this hurricane that's about to hit Florida.
Yes.
Let's hope that, UCF, if they do end up playing this weekend, we get a win, get back on track. We'll see.
We need it.
Otherwise, any parting shots, boys?
Listen, if we don't win this weekend, Ben and I are going to be excited because we're right into basketball season, because that's all that we are going to care about until then.
We're going to be charging on into basketball season.
Yes.
But regardless, I hope that this is a totally different show next week. I hope that they can somehow surprise us and come together as a team and take it to Cincinnati, which we're kind of trying to push this rivalry thing, but we'll see about them being an actual rival. But hopefully we'll be able to kind of turn it around this week and set a little bit better course for this season. Provide us with a little more hope to go off of.
Yep, agreed. All right, well, great pod. Thanks for everyone that will listen to this. Once they do listen to it, remember to subscribe, like our podcast, share it. Go Knights and
charge on. Man, I can't wait until we figure out what the heck's going on with this team, because I just